3. Good evening and welcome to this European conference about the migration crisis.
During this decade, the refugee burning issue has deeply concerned the member states of the European Union due to the fact that it has caused many organizational and functional problems. In order to give this problem a satisfying solution, the committee has come up with a plan. So we would like to know your opinions and your concerns about this problem and its solution. We will start with the Netherlands. Welcome. And what is your country's policy about the recent refugees issue?
I am here to represent the Netherlands, and in recent years the number of asylum applications has increased. It went from 10,000 to 60,000 in just 5 years.
Thank you for your time, Netherlands. Let's keep going with Greece. What is your country's policy about the recent refugees crisis?
I'm being here to represent my home country of Greece. I would have to say that the refugee issue is a worldwide concern, but Greece is a special and struggling unit in this matter because 50,000 and more refugees have fled violence from the Middle East and South and Central Asia and have seen Greece as an entry to the rest of Europe. But sadly, they can no longer legally go into further Europe and have to stay permanently in Greece. Nevertheless, Greece has maintained a positive stance about the refugee matter and continues to do so. Its policy stands for sheltering and supporting people in need. Even though the matter requires facilities and finance Greece does not obtain, it tries its hardest to do the best that is possible.
In your opinion, what are the highlights of this policy?
Highlights that showcase this policy are the new asylums that we have made and the committees that supervise these asylums. Also, government has granted a number of rights and protection for the refugees. Furthermore, we have free healthcare for people in need, like injured people and pregnant women, and some new laws considering education, habitats, and more.
And what are the highlights for ending this policy?
These were the highlights for, but against the country, even though its people may have shown some negative superstitions in its political matters, even if some politics have made their efforts, there haven't been any actions that are not as helpful as they can be about this issue.
And what are the difficulties forthcoming in everyday in your country?
Every day we face problems with finance, our insufficient facilities, and the fact that we do not have the space, neither the time to handle and accommodate 50,000 people. There are people left homeless and in need without the basic stuff they need in their daily lives.
And what would you suggest in personal?
From my point of view, the problem is one that all countries, especially European ones, should share. It is unfair for one country to give all that it has and more, and others to just practice in theory and not in action. I would suggest some funding from more developed countries in Europe and an equal division of refugees throughout Europe.
Thank you, Greece.
Let's close with Denmark. What is your option? What is your opinion about your country's policy in the situation?
Well, hello, I'm here to represent Denmark, and in my country, the last 5 years, we have sent a pretty clear and consistent message to all the asylum seekers. This message couldn't have been other, of course, than stay away. The last numbers of people asking for asylum in Denmark have shown that this message have been effectively and successfully get across, because these numbers have been importantly reduced, especially after the year 2015, which were the last elections, which had been won, of course, by a center-right coalition. The new government didn't, of course, try to block the entrance of the refugees by blocking the borders. Instead, we have voted for and put in practice new restrictive laws and measurements which made Denmark an extremely unappealing and unattractive country to all the refugees.
And what do you believe are the highlights of this policy?
Well, I would like to inform you about some of the highlights and some of the measures that we took. First of all, the government decided to cut down refugees' benefits for 45%, and in addition, they advertised this cut in newspapers in Lebanon a country where a lot of refugees come from. In addition, we gave the authorities the license to seize assets and money valued over 1,000 Danish crowns from refugees as a help to pay for their subsistence to the country. Furthermore, according to a new law, a refugee who has managed to live in Denmark is not permitted to see their family for 3 years. In other words, immigrants living in Denmark cannot apply to bring their families into the country unless they have completed 3 years at least of living here. To sum up, we observe that the government of Denmark doesn't practically prevent any asylum seekers from entering the country. We just make them not to choose Denmark as a destination because of our really harsh measurements and the way that we treat them.